Have you ever wondered how the Russia-Ukraine conflict began? A question that echoes in the halls of global politics, the answer to which is as intricate as the conflict itself. The origins of this conflict are steeped in a rich historical tapestry, a jumble of narratives woven over centuries. The ties between Russia and Ukraine are ancient, dating back to the medieval state of Kievan Rus, a cradle of Eastern Slavic culture. Over time, these once close siblings drifted apart, pursuing different paths and forging distinct identities. Yet, their destinies remained intertwined, their futures linked by the invisible threads of history and geography. The present conflict, however, finds its roots in more recent history. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in the early 90s marked a turning point, setting Ukraine on a path towards independence and sovereignty. But the specter of the past loomed large, casting long shadows over the fledgling nation. The umbilical cord that once connected it to Mother Russia proved hard to sever, and the echoes of shared history reverberated in the politics of the present. A pivotal moment in this unfolding drama was the annexation of Crimea in 2014. This controversial event, viewed by Russia as a legitimate response to the will of the Crimean people, was widely condemned by the international community as a flagrant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty. The annexation of Crimea ignited the fuse of the current conflict, stoking the flames of discord and setting the stage for the tumultuous events that followed. The subsequent outbreak of violence in eastern Ukraine marked a sharp escalation of the conflict, propelling it onto the international stage. The struggle for control of the Donbas region, a hotbed of pro-Russian sentiment, has since become a symbolic battleground, a microcosm of the larger geopolitical struggle between East and West. As we've seen, the roots of this conflict run deep, setting the stage for a geopolitical struggle with far-reaching implications. The Russia-Ukraine conflict isn't just a regional dispute, but a complex puzzle piece in the grand game of global politics. From its historical origins to the current crisis, each facet of this conflict adds another layer to the intricate tapestry of geopolitics. What might the world look like should Russia emerge victorious in this conflict? Let's take a moment to consider this. The potential outcomes of such a scenario are as vast and varied as the nations watching this unfold. A Russian victory could prompt a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape, a ripple effect that alters alliances and recalibrates power dynamics on a global scale. The prevailing order, grounded firmly in Western democratic principles, would suddenly face a formidable challenge. Nations would find themselves compelled to reassess their relationships, their strategic partnerships, and their place in this new world order. This geopolitical recalibration could very well usher in a new era, one filled with uncertainty and realignment. In the shadow of a successful Russia, the world might see a shift in the perception of democracy itself. If an assertive Russia triumphs, it could cast a long shadow over the ideals of democratic governance, potentially emboldening autocratic regimes elsewhere. The very essence of democracy could be put to the test, as nations grapple with the delicate balance between defending democratic values and navigating the complexities of international relations. Closer to the heart of the conflict in Eastern Europe, neighboring countries would confront heightened security concerns. An expansionist Russia, triumphant and bold, could trigger anxiety about territorial integrity. The specter of a resurgent power on their doorstep would prompt these nations to reassess their defense strategies and seek assurances from international allies. The dynamics of regional security alliances such as NATO would likely undergo significant transformations. The potential humanitarian consequences are equally as profound. The plight of Ukraine, faced with the challenges of foreign occupation, would unfold in a tragic narrative. Potential mass displacements, the disruption of livelihoods, and the destruction of vital infrastructure could contribute to a humanitarian crisis, demanding global attention and concerted efforts to alleviate suffering. The potential outcomes are profound, reshaping the dynamics of international relations. The world could be staring at a new reality, one where the balance of power is shifted, democratic ideals are challenged, and the peace and security of nations hang in the balance. How could a Russian triumph impact the state of global democracy? An intriguing question indeed. Picture this: a world where the triumph of an assertive Russia casts a long, ominous shadow over the ideals of democratic governance. This is not just a theoretical musing, it's a potential reality that could fundamentally reshape our global political landscape. A Russian victory could serve as a potent symbol for autocratic regimes around the world. It might embolden these governments, providing them with a tangible example of how assertive, expansionist policies can yield substantial gains. Such a precedent could threaten the democratic fabric of nations teetering on the brink of autocracy, potentially fueling a shift towards more authoritarian forms of governance. But it's not just about the rise of autocracy. The success of Russia could also put democratic nations in a precarious position. These countries would grapple with the delicate balance between defending democratic values and navigating the complexities of international relations. It's a tightrope walk where one misstep could have far-reaching consequences. Imagine the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and other democratic nations wrestling with this conundrum. On one hand, they would feel compelled to defend the principles of democracy, sovereignty, and self-determination, principles upon which their own nations were built. On the other hand, they would have to contend with the realities of a changed geopolitical landscape, where traditional alliances might be strained and new power dynamics could emerge. This challenge could prompt nations to reassess their relationships and strategic partnerships. It could usher in a new era of uncertainty as countries recalibrate their foreign policies to account for the ascendance of a more assertive Russia. The Western order, long anchored by democratic principles, would face a formidable challenge, potentially altering the dynamics of international relations. In this scenario, the resilience of democratic ideals would be put to the test. Would nations uphold their commitment to these principles in the face of geopolitical realignment? Or would they compromise on their values, succumbing to the pressures of pragmatism and realpolitik? These are the questions that loom large in a world where Russia emerges victorious in its conflict with Ukraine. The very essence of democracy could be put to the test. This statement is not just a dramatization, it's a sobering reflection of the potential implications of a Russian triumph. It underscores the fundamental challenges that such an outcome would pose to the state of global democracy. In the wake of a potential Russian victory, what could be the security implications for Eastern Europe? It's a question that's been echoing through the halls of power and think tanks worldwide. The heart of the matter rests on heightened security concerns. Picture this, an expansionist Russia, emboldened by a triumph over Ukraine, casting a long, intimidating shadow over its neighbors. This scenario would undeniably trigger anxiety about territorial integrity among Eastern European nations. This isn't just about boundary lines on a map, but the very essence of national sovereignty and the future of these nations. So, what happens next? These countries would likely undergo a thorough reassessment of their defense strategies. They would need to prepare for the possibility of a resurgent power at their doorstep, reevaluating their military capabilities, defense alliances, and strategic partnerships. It's a daunting task, but one that becomes necessary in the face of potential aggression. This brings us to the fascinating world of security alliances, like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO as it's more commonly known. These alliances are not static entities. They evolve in response to the shifting sands of global politics. In our scenario, a Russian victory over Ukraine could spur significant transformations within these alliances. The dynamics of power, the balance of responsibilities among member states, and the very nature of collective defense could all come under scrutiny and potentially be redefined. Imagine NATO, for instance, grappling with the challenge of a more assertive Russia. How would it adapt its strategic outlook, military posture, and member contributions to effectively deter potential aggression? It's a complex puzzle with no easy solutions, but one that nations would need to solve to ensure their security. In this high-stakes geopolitical game, the repercussions of a Russian triumph over Ukraine would ripple through the region, forcing nations to reassess their security paradigms. The specter of a resurgent power at the doorstep prompts nations to reassess their defense strategies. It's a reminder that in the realm of international relations, a single conflict can reverberate far beyond its immediate theater, shaping the future of entire regions. What could be the humanitarian fallout from this conflict? The specter of conflict often carries with it a grim shadow of humanitarian crisis. The situation between Russia and Ukraine is no different. Humanitarian consequences are an inevitable offshoot of war, and they often bear a heavy toll on the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. One of the most evident and immediate effects of the conflict could be mass displacements. People forced to flee their homes to escape the horrors of war could find themselves in a state of profound uncertainty, their lives uprooted, their futures uncertain. This displacement is not just a matter of numbers, but a profound human tragedy, with each person carrying a story of loss and disruption. Furthermore, the war could disrupt livelihoods on a staggering scale. The machinery of everyday life grinds to a halt in the face of conflict. Jobs are lost, industries are disrupted, and the economic fabric of society is torn apart. This disruption reverberates through the lives of individuals, families, and communities, leaving a trail of economic hardship and despair. The destruction of infrastructure is another potential consequence. Roads, bridges, hospitals, schools, the very structures that underpin a functioning society, could be reduced to rubble. This destruction not only impedes the delivery of essential services but also complicates the task of post-conflict reconstruction. But amidst this grim landscape, there is a call to action. This potential crisis demands global attention and a concerted effort to alleviate suffering. It beckons the international community to step up, to extend a hand of solidarity, and to marshal resources to address the humanitarian fallout. It's a call for empathy, for collective action, and for the recognition of our shared humanity. The humanitarian consequences loom large on the horizon, demanding global attention. They remind us that at the heart of geopolitical struggles are people, their lives, their dreams, their fears, and it is for them that we must strive to prevent, mitigate, and ultimately heal the wounds of conflict. How might the international community respond to a Russian victory? This question leads us into the labyrinth of diplomatic implications that would follow. Sanctions, a cornerstone of diplomatic strategy, could be the first line of defense. These economic constraints are not merely punitive, they're a form of communication, a language of disapproval, expressed in the terms of trade and finance. They're intended to exert pressure, to compel a change of course. But sanctions can be a double-edged sword. While they might cripple an economy, they could also rally the affected nation around a common adversary, thereby strengthening the resolve of the very regime they're meant to weaken. Diplomatic isolation could be another fallout. The international community, taking a stand against the violation of sovereignty, might distance itself from the triumphant Russia. Diplomatic ties could unravel, ambassadors might be recalled, and international engagements could be suspended. The world stage could become a lonely place for a nation shunned by its peers. Then there's the conundrum faced by international institutions. Organizations such as the United Nations, the European Union, and others are built on principles of justice and international law. They'd be tasked with maintaining a delicate balance between upholding these principles and engaging pragmatically with a new geopolitical reality. This could lead to a period of introspection as these institutions reassess their roles, their influence, and their capacity to shape global events. But let's not forget, diplomacy is an art of possibilities, not just of punitive measures. It's also about dialogue, negotiation, and finding common ground. Could the international community, in the wake of a Russian victory, find a way to engage constructively with the new power dynamics? Could they broker peace, secure commitments, and foster a climate of cooperation, even in the face of profound disagreements? These are questions that can't be answered with certainty, but they underscore the complex, multi-layered nature of the diplomatic challenges that would arise. The diplomatic stage becomes crucial, with potential for isolation and economic pressure. But it's also a stage upon which new narratives can be written, new understandings reached, and perhaps a path towards a more stable future can be charted. In the intricate dance of geopolitics, can we ever predict the future accurately? Navigating the labyrinth of international relations, forecasting the outcomes of geopolitical events proves to be a Herculean task. The world stage is a complex web of interconnectivity where a single event can ripple across the globe, influencing the course of history in unforeseen ways. This complexity is amplified in the context of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It's not just about two nations locked in a power struggle. It's about a potential shift in global dynamics, a reconfiguration of alliances, and a possible recalibration of the world order. Unforeseen variables too lurk in the shadows, ready to alter the course of events. Economic fluctuations, technological advancements, and even climate change are but a few factors that can influence this geopolitical equation. For instance, a sudden surge in renewable energy could diminish the strategic importance of Russia's oil reserves, thereby shifting the balance of power. Moreover, the implications of the conflict extend far beyond the immediate theater of war. It's not just about who wins or loses, but about how the outcomes reverberate through the corridors of power. It's about how they reshape the global security paradigms and test the resilience of democratic ideals. The echoes of this conflict will be heard around the world, influencing policies and strategies for years to come. History has shown us that the tides of geopolitical events are often unpredictable and can turn swiftly. So, as we gaze into the crystal ball of the future, we must remember that the only certainty is uncertainty. In this intricate geopolitical dance, nations grapple not only with the strategic considerations of the moment, but also with the enduring uncertainties of the future. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is a complex and evolving situation with far-reaching implications. The ripple effects of this struggle could potentially redraw the geopolitical map, challenging the prevailing order and compelling nations to reassess their strategic alliances. The triumph of an assertive Russia could cast a long shadow over the ideals of democratic governance, while neighboring nations confront heightened security concerns. The humanitarian fallout, with the potential for mass displacements and disruption of livelihoods, would be a story of profound tragedy. Diplomatically, the international community's response would shape the post-conflict landscape, with the potential for sanctions, isolation, and a re-evaluation of relationships. In the unpredictable realm of global politics, unforeseen variables always play a part. Yet the echoes of this conflict could reverberate far beyond the immediate theater of war, testing the resilience of democratic ideals and prompting a re-evaluation of global security paradigms. As we navigate these uncertain times, understanding the potential outcomes of this conflict becomes ever more crucial.